I'm coming at you live on tape from Sydney, Ohio. And this week, I know I promised you we'd talk about WWE contracts. I thought I'd cover something not so boring and talk about the history of the stable Evolution with Triple H. I can hear everyone tuning out already. Now, Evolution is known as one of the greatest stables in the history of WWE, in the history of wrestling, actually. It started because Triple H wanted to do something with Ric Flair, who was his idol growing up. Now, Ric Flair had lost a lot of confidence because of WCW dying and the way WWE was using him. And so Triple H really wanted to do something with him. Now, Vince McMahon didn't like stables, but Triple H was able to talk him into letting them do a stable with him and Ric Flair. Now, they needed a third man. Randy Orton, who debuted in 2002 and as a face and was using the overdrive as his finisher, did not get over as a face. And the overdrive, which he looked to replace, Diamond Dallas Page, who was on the roster at the time, gave him the Diamond Cutter, which he called the RKO and made even more famous than the Diamond Cutter. He got injured shortly after that, and so Triple H decided to bring him in back as a heel and have him join Evolution. Batista, who was known as Leviathan in OVW and wore contact lenses to change his eyes appearance in OVW, was trained as a big man wrestler, which meant he no-sold moves and used a bunch of power moves. That is the same thing he did when he debuted on SmackDown in 2002 as Reverend Devon, for those of you who remember that gimmick, his enforcer, Deacon Batista. Now, he did not get over as Deacon Batista, so they moved him to Raw, where Triple H decided he wanted him in Evolution, but he wanted him and Triple H and Ric Flair to also teach Batista how to work a match instead of having him be a big man wrestler. Because while Batista is very muscular, he was not overly tall for that era. You've got to remember, this is an era in WWE of The Undertaker, Kane, Big Show. These guys are close to 7 foot. Batista's like 6'5", 6'6". So they decided to bring in Batista as the fourth man. So Ric Flair was berated by Triple H in the storyline for losing a match. Triple H was wrestling Rob Van Dam for the World Heavyweight title, and Ric Flair came out with a sledgehammer, and it looked like he was going to hit Triple H with it, but then hit Rob Van Dam, making it so Triple H won the title. And after that, he started coming out with Triple H. He also started coming out with Batista. And Randy Orton re-debuted as a heel, and they all started coming out together. Now, around this time, Randy Orton and Batista were in a tag match with, I believe, the Dudley Boys, and Batista tore his tricep. Now, Vince McMahon, not wanting Evolution to lose any time together and wanting them to go forward as a big stable, suggested Mark Jindrak replace Batista. Now, for those of you who don't remember Mark Jindrak, he was in the dying days of WCW and came to WWF. He had all the tools to be a big star, but the problem was he wasn't entirely serious backstage. As Triple H would note when Vince McMahon pushed him down their throat to join Evolution. They filmed some vignettes with Mark Jindrak, but as Triple H didn't really like him because he wasn't serious. And Triple H would think he would hold Randy Orton back. Now, Mark Jindrak would later admit that these were all true. He would have held Randy Orton back, and he wasn't entirely serious. So Mark Jindrak was then put in a tag team with Garrison Cage and released in 2005, where he would later go on to become a big star in Mexico. Sorry about that. Triple H would continue to hold on to the World Heavyweight Championship, with Randy Orton winning the Intercontinental title. And then Goldberg would make his WWE debut and would manage to take the title off of Triple H. At which point Triple H would put a $100,000 bounty on his head, which Batista would collect, bringing Evolution back together as the original 4 members. Now, Ric Flair and Batista would go on to win the World Tag Team titles, making all the gold on Raw belonging to Evolution. When Triple H would eventually beat Goldberg again for the World Heavyweight Championship after Goldberg announced that he was leaving WWE after his contract was up. Now, Chris Benoit would enter the Royal Rumble at number 1 and would end up winning it. Now, this match at WrestleMania was billed out mainly as Shawn Michaels versus Triple H, with Chris Benoit just kind of thrown in there because he won the Royal Rumble. For a lot of us fans, though, we've seen it as Chris Benoit finally getting his due. He was always a great talent, but he's finally getting the push he deserved. Chris Benoit would go on to make Triple H tap out due to the crippler crossface and win the world title. Shawn Michaels and Triple H would continue to feud, but Randy Orton would become the number 1 contender and would beat Chris Benoit for the title at SummerSlam. At which point, Triple H and Evolution would turn on Randy Orton, turning Randy Orton in face in what was a disastrous move. Because it was just so easy to hate Randy Orton at that time. And Triple H would once again get the World Heavyweight Championship. Now, Batista would win the Royal Rumble that year after an original botched ending. This was the botched ending where Batista and John Cena eliminated each other at the same time, and Vince McMahon came out and tore both quadriceps and ordered the match restarted. I'm sure we've all seen the clip. Batista would go on to win it, and Triple H would try to start a feud between JBL and Batista in order to keep his World Heavyweight Championship, but Batista would decide to go on and face Triple H and win the World Heavyweight Championship, turning him face. Triple H would take some time off. Ric Flair would win the Intercontinental Championship, and Triple H would decide to feud with Ric Flair, which Ric Flair would ultimately win. And that was pretty much the end of the stable Evolution. They would get back together on occasion on the 15th anniversary of Raw with Triple H, Ric Flair, and Batista teaming versus Randy Orton's 3-man team. Also around WrestleMania 30, when Batista won the Royal Rumble, to many boos and many people chanting Daniel Bryan, because people want Daniel Bryan to win, where Randy Orton and Batista were in the main event with Daniel Bryan after Daniel Bryan defeated Triple H. And they'd have a slight Evolution run versus The Shield. Daniel Bryan, by the way, won that match at WrestleMania 30 to win the championship before Batista quit WWE. There would be another return to Batista teaming with Triple H, but Batista would turn on Triple H and they'd have their legendary WrestleMania match again, with Batista losing and not retiring Triple H. Triple H, though, retired a year or two later. And that's pretty much Evolution. They were a dominant tag team for a year or two. And they were the playboys and jet flying, limousine riding people like the Four Horsemen, but they also had that heel ruthlessness like Triple H. And they were Evolution. I hope you enjoyed this video, and you'll watch the video on Dr. Otto and the Riddle of the Gloom Beam. And whatever song I decide to write at the end of the week.